Thank you, Kevin, for taking the time. Of course, it's always appreciated to be able to speak with one of the major movers of college rugby here in the U.S.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I don't know about that major mover tag, but I've been a big fan of yours for a while, so it's my pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you.
Man, so kind of right off the bat, can you tell me the last few years we've watched D1A rugby start to develop and build out more and more. For you, you've been part of this rugby community for so long. What is it that you guys are seeing as for the future of D1A rugby as of right now?
Well, I mean, I think for the future, I mean, look, sky's the limit, right? I mean, I think we all know, or the reason why we're all involved in this game is because we understand the power of this sport and how it can really grow in this country and take fire. And our objective has been pretty clear from the start, which is we want to be a mainstream sport. We want to be in a position where every Saturday you can sit down with your favorite beverage, click on the remote, and watch college rugby on television. And so, with that, my charge has been pretty narrow in scope, which is how do we get us on TV? How do we build us more into the mainstream sporting U.S. sporting environment? And we're inching closer.
Awesome. So, can you tell us exactly what is your part in this process of developing towards the mainstreamness of college rugby? What is specifically is it that you've been doing?
Well, it's there's quite a few things actually. A lot of it is mostly administrative behind the scenes. What are we doing to make ourselves, I guess, for lack of a better term, more NCAA like, to fit more of the scholastic sports brand in terms of eligibility, compliance, making sure that we have all our disciplinary processes up to speed. The challenge has been as a club sport, which we've existed for since it's began. All the rules have been pretty loose, and enforcement of those rules have been even looser. So we're going through that little bit of uncomfortable phase where we're raising the standards off the field. Unfortunately, my job is to make sure that we follow those standards.
Oh, I think I lost you for a little bit.
With that is the perform the best. What we're seeing is the teams that perform the best are the teams who have it, who are organized the best behind the scenes as well, who have that institutional buy-in and institutional support, and they have that support because they're doing things right.
We always talk about doing things right, and I think there's always the question, especially when you see in other sports where we can talk about it being a copycat league, whether it's football, whether it's basketball. Rugby, especially here in the U.S., has been always very interesting in the factor of, you see elements that can work with teams, but it never seems like it is kind of jump started into a way where it resonates through the other teams, whether it's the women's side or the men's side. For you, what is it that you think that is being done now to kind of create the consistency across teams to create a more equitable, more greater parity within the league, and subsequently how they are able to kind of raise their standards so that we can see better rugby and have better outcomes?
Yeah, so we're a long ways away from parity. I mean, we're starting to see that, at the top of the game, it was all Cal, right? It was Cal and then everybody else. And then BYU kind of rose to Cal's standard. St. Mary's followed by Life, now Lindenwood. Now you have Army and Navy. They're both knocking on the door as well. So we are growing in that competitive parity at the top end of the market, but let's be honest. I mean, those teams are head and shoulders probably above the next group. You have Penn State or Central Washington. And what we're finding is those who have done the best at engaging their school, their institution, and getting institutional buy-in, that's the support that we need that helps, whether it be with facilities, whether it helps with entry into school, with academics, academic support. So my job a lot of the times is spending time on the phone with administrators, whether they be club sports administrators or varsity athletic administrators, trying to get them to understand that, hey, we're not the ultimate Frisbee club. We're not the Quidditch club, that this is a national competition. It's competed. The teams that are competing in this competition are striving to be at their best And we want to be seen, as equivalent to most of their varsity athletic sports.
Oh, I love it. I think that's real because again, perception becomes reality far further than reality becoming established culture. So if you're able to get the people to view it the correct way, then people have a tendency to make it into that. And I see that's where you got trying to go.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, it kind of brings up one of the reasons that we were talking to begin with. You guys put together this deal, this 3-year deal with what was essentially 11 sports, but can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on what it is that you have going on with this and what exactly is happening with this partnership?
Yeah. So we're really excited to announce we have a 3-year deal with 11 Sports, which is now For the Fans FTF Network, which is owned by the Lacrosse Network. And I really got to give credit to Paul Keeler and Tashay Flowers, our executive chairs for D1A, because they've spearheaded this deal. But it's been many years in the works. I mean, for a long time, we were trying to get ourselves on television, like I said earlier, and we were on ESPN3. Then we were able to move on to ESPNU. In the last couple of years, we spent our time on CBS Sports, and they've broadcasted our finals and our semifinals. And we've done a little bit of work with Pro Rugby and what was the Rugby Channel as well. But the objective for us was, how do we get more widespread audience? How do we get out there in the marketplace? How do we also take advantage of the OTT platforms and not have a paywall, so that we don't want to preach to the choir. We want to preach to the masses, the unconverted, right? And we want to get those folks who might not know of rugby or who might not be as excited about rugby as you and I are, to have rugby in front of them so that they can see what this game has to offer. So it's a 3-year deal. Like all TV deals, what they were mostly focused on and what they want is the finals. Once they have the finals, then they realize that they have to build the story. So they got to kind of back into semifinals and quarterfinals. And we've been able to leverage the fact that, hey, we're not just a competition about the top 2 teams that make the championship or the top 4 teams. There's 68 teams that make up D1A, and 6 teams that have a story to tell. So being able to leverage their desire to put the finals on and be able to work that backwards to offer more coverage, so that we're able to coverage conference championships, we're able to coverage sevens championships, we're able to do one-off games. So we have, I think, 22 regular season matches that we'll be able to broadcast this year, along with 6 sevens championships and our sevens final, along with our 15 match D1A playoff season. So we got a lot of opportunity to put rugby out in front of people, and we're excited about it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's never a bad thing to be able to create more mass and create more opportunity. I'll always say one of the things that I always like is the appreciation of digital being utilized more and more in rugby. I've always been one. I've said a number of times, in sports, you always have these notable moments. In baseball, it was their power originally was in the stadium environment. In basketball, it was focused on the players. In the NFL, it was the development of the TV deals and the TV, creating the TV show out of the sport. And I've always felt rugby should be one that became a forefront when it comes to the digital side and be able to develop the live stream and be able to develop through these OTTs that are popping up more and more. So this was great forward movement that we've had. But if you could tell me, we've seen this happen before. What do you feel is different in this situation? In the sense of, what is it that you think continues to would bring non-rugby people to the screen more and more, versus them just seeing it as any other sport? What do you think can be done with? What do you think is being done with For the Fans that will be able to attach the emotional attachment of non-fans and create them into fans? What do you feel might be that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, one of the risks that we run with just being on all digital is the only people who can find us are the people who are looking for us, right? So, I mean, I think it's got to be a good balance between having your linear TV, your traditional national broadcasts, and your digital platforms, and that's what we get with For the Fans. For the Fans has its own linear outlet. You can find us on DirecTV, you can find it on Roku, so it's out there for people who are flipping through the channels, and they can discover us that way. But then also there'll be 10 times that amount of content that's available digitally. So once someone does discover that this game looks pretty interesting, they'll be able to see exactly where they can go on to and click on a lot more rugby. I mean, it was great this weekend, over Thanksgiving. I'm sitting at home and we had about 20 folks over at the house, and I click on the Roku and get over to For the Fans and plug it in. And next thing you know, we're watching, I think we watched Navy Lindenwood, then we watched one of the Liberty Cup games, and we also watched Big Ten, Ohio State, Indiana. And my family didn't know the difference, as people were walking in and out of the house, they just thought this was on regular television. And it was pretty cool to have college rugby playing all day long on Saturday during Thanksgiving holiday.
I love that. And that's what we want. Again, to create the culture, you create the perception, it creates the reality, and then it becomes just simply ingrained into the thought process.
Yeah. And I also think the other piece to it too is we got to lower those barriers of entry for people to get to us. So, I mean, we really did what we could to try to work with the Rugby Channel when that was on, but certainly the challenge was there was a subscription. And certainly with Flow Rugby, and I really appreciate everything that they're doing for the game as well. But, as a rugby fan, as a pretty passionate rugby fan, it's a challenge for me, to fork over the dough to be able to watch a game on the weekend. I can't even imagine how that must chase people away who aren't even really interested in our game. And, my wife became a rugby fan, not because I was involved in rugby, or she became, let me back up. My wife became a fan of Texas Hold'em. She started watching poker because when our children were young and she was up in the middle of the night taking care of babies, she's flipping through the channels, and what does she see? Some guys sitting around the table playing poker. Well, for whatever reason, she was intrigued just enough to stop for a little while. Fast forward months later, she's into it, right? She and suddenly, right, just flipping through the channels. And I think we want to take advantage of that opportunity as well. Can we be on that screen over and over again where people who are flipping through find us and say, yeah, this looks pretty interesting, and spend some more time with us?
No, I love that. And you know what? It's real. Again, we find, I think that was one of the ways that, ironically, this isn't to sports, but I felt like that was one of the ways that we saw with the anime craze. A lot of us as kids, when we were young, we just got Dragon Ball Z at like 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And it was just like, what is this? It was like, this looks kind of dope. Move it, 15, 20 years later, and we're talking about a whole cultural changeover that is almost specific to Japanese culture and the way that we do animation and storytelling. And now it's with this subculture of kids that now have just blown up off of it because they grew up off of it, just seeing it randomly off of one or two things, and it just went from there.
Yeah, that's all it takes. I mean, imagine if they had put a paywall in front of it. I mean, it would never have taken off, right?
Never existed. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So it also looks like you guys aren't trying to just rely on the games themselves. Obviously, I like to pat myself on the back and then give the credit where credit is due for being able to pat myself on the back. But you guys are also looking to be able to create a kind of weekly show out of this format, out of this deal as well, which I have a much bigger believer on, because I believe that the entertainment of sports is far greater in impact sometimes than the sport in and of itself, mainly because this is the way that people are able to emotionally attach. We look at it with the Olympics. We don't always really know anything about the sports, but we listen to those pieces about those players and stuff, and it goes. So can you tell me a little bit about what you guys are wanting to do with this show, and what is it that you had in mind with it?
Yeah, so I think when the deal was initially discussed, it was 15 shows that we were going to produce once a week. I think that number is now out to about 50 or 52 shows in a year. And we're pretty excited about that because, like you said, man, the game is one thing, but the people behind the game, the people in the game, the story of the people participating is so much greater. You know, you watch the Olympics and you can watch the 100-meter finals, and it's an hour-long program for a 10-second race, right? And what are they doing during that hour? They're digging deep into who these people are and where they came from and how they got to where they're at and the struggles and the triumphs. And look, rugby, you know, you look at the different teams in the competition, there's stories to tell. There are some pretty intriguing people, personalities between the athletes, between the coaches. And we're going to be relying on folks like yourself to get that story out there and really bring the game home, right? I mean, you watch Cal and Life duke it out in the finals, and that's fantastic theater, and that's great accomplishment. But you start finding out about the individual stories of some of those players and how they got to where they're at. When you find out about how Life, that used to be a chiropractic college that's now developed into this undergrad and now this national rugby power, or when you hear about the storied Cal program and Coach Clark and just all of the Eagles that they've produced and how they go back to the origins of rugby in this country. I mean, those are the real compelling pieces that keep people coming back. You know, they become fans of the coaches, fans of the players, fans of that institution, and we need to get that story out there.
And, you know, I agree. You know, you do, knowing the history stands to be able to let you know what your foundation and exactly where you're going. If you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it. Great saying, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So I love the fact that is something that you guys have even thought about within this concept. Going from 15 to 52, 51, 52, that's amazing confidence on what to expect from it. But I think it also shows the willingness to be able to be flexible. It's kind of the old school way of letting the show play itself out as opposed to canceling after, maybe it's not hitting it like we thought. No. Just give it time. Give it time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously that's a lot of stuff to talk about, right? You know, for 52 weeks. But I mean, there's a lot of, and there's plenty to debate, right? I mean, we're never short on controversy, whether we're tripping over our own selves with some of the decisions that are made, whether it's discussing eligibility, whether it's discussing competitive structure. You know, there's a lot to talk about, a lot to be debated. I think it's good to get some of that information that happened, folks aren't privy to, but I'm looking forward to, hey, let's get this stuff out there and let's let people talk about it. Let's get the panels out there and talk about why this is good versus why it's not good, or suggest changes. You know, let's get those discussions out there and let everybody hear the different sides.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think, you know, kind of moving on from that, I want to make ask one more section of questions before I let you go. And, you know, when it comes to all these, I think it's always been great that we have a chance to be able to see the rugby. I always love the fact that we have a chance to see the entertainment side of rugby. But I think the one side that people have very poorly been able to promote or poorly been able to access is when we come to the business of rugby. And I think that's the one that it impacts how the schools are able to develop. It impacts parity. It impacts literally how we're able to flow across the board. When you come to see this deal, obviously from a sports standpoint in the U.S., we absolutely will see that there's a benefit to it. Obviously, more access, more reach, more people, more eyes, and we can benefit from a grander scale. But when it comes down to the individual schools, we know that that's where we start to see a little bit more problems, whether it's how the programs are run from an amateur to a scholarship-based or a semi-scholar, or even one that's a fledgling program. For you, do you see a pathway or maybe a system that you guys are looking to implement that would help schools within this D1A program be able to find means of not only just getting exposure, but be able to create self-sustenance that will be able to create a cycle where they're able to be more consistent, be more powerful, where there's not such a massive gap between teams? Do you see a system that you guys are wanting to implement to be able to pull that off?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's face it, money makes the world go round, and it's no coincidence that those best performing teams also the ones who are best funded. You know, they get the best support. So our goal, by getting these broadcasts, one, that costs money, right? It costs a lot of money to produce these shows, to get people out there to film it, to get somebody to direct it. So we've been fortunate with this deal with For the Fans, where they're supplying all of that broadcast power and those broadcast dollars. We're also able to earn some income from that as well, which helps the competition, because all of that goes back into the teams. We provide travel support for the postseason, but it gives us more resources that we can now put back in the competition. But as for individual programs, I mean, one of the things that we're already starting to see that happens is, in order for us to broadcast the game, they have to be in a broadcast available facility. That disqualifies most of the rec sports fields that most of our teams are currently participating in. So now that means a conversation with the school, which is, hey, we want to broadcast your team. Can we get access to your soccer stadium or your lacrosse stadium? And we're starting to find that a lot of programs are a lot of schools are very positive on that in terms of getting their team greater access. Once we get that greater access, now we have something we can sell as sponsors, right? Whether it be commercial space, whether it's billboards or ads or signage that's on the field, but also the commercials that happen, during the breaks, also the scoreboard wraps, the different PA announcements. So those are all opportunities that the teams are actually able to sell and actually make revenue for themselves. When we're having conversations with schools and talking about broadcast and commercials, and one of the things also is getting a PSA for the school, where the school is able to show their 30-second commercial. That makes a lot of ears perk up, because now the schools start looking at it and saying, wait a minute, this rugby thing is different. This isn't our standard club program that we're spending money on, or all the kids are spending money on. This is something that's giving money, both money and value back to the school. So we firmly believe that this is our way forward, that it's going to be slow burn, right? Not everybody is going to jump on board with it right away, but we want to start with one program at a time. Can we get more engaged with their administration? Can we get more facility access? Can we get more legitimacy? And through those things, does that give us an avenue that we can now start generating more revenue through commercial sales? You look at a basketball game, you look at football arenas, and it's all about the make so we can build better facilities, have more scholarships, better fields, better uniforms. So it's all a cycle. So we're on that infancy, but we think this is the way forward for us.
No, I think that's excellent. And I think that I'm glad that it's being thought of and how important that is, because, like you said, money does make the world go around. But I think what's worse is the fear that money is going to negatively impact as opposed to positively is a much greater hindrance than what money can do and change and, create a different environment and expectation that goes along with the sport, which I think we all want to be able to rise up to that point. If more is invested in, then we want to make sure that a better outcome and a better product comes out each time.
Yeah. I mean, and certainly there is risk, right? But I think trying to get to that higher standard and holding ourselves to a higher state of being and conducting ourselves on a higher plane, right? I mean, when guys are on TV, they got to be in proper uniforms, so no longer can you, borrow your buddy's shorts or just grab a pair of socks out the drawer. I mean, we want people to prepare and to think about, hey, what images are we trying to project? Part of my role as commissioner is I'm going through the game film, and I'm picking out and calling teams out on when they're not in proper uniform, or what's their behavior like on the sidelines. Do they have kit bags scrawled across the sidelines? Are there technical zones? Now, it seems nitpicky and it seems petty, but when we look at where we're going and the images that we're trying to project, we want to make sure that we look professional. And when you look professional, you act professional. When you act professional, people start looking at you as professional, right?
I have been a big proponent of slowly killing off the Tommy Boy, what I like to call Tommy Boy rugby from the movie Tommy Boy in the beginning scene. Kind of just that, like, oh, he's that, meathead, airhead, where it's like, no, there is an expectation. It's not just we're just random guys running into each other, random people running into each other, men and women. But there is a consistency. There is an organization. We have fun with it. There is a tradition that sets it apart. There's a culture that is established. But within that, when you see the viewing product, it's clean, it's consistent, it's exciting, it's dynamic. It's what we want from any sport, entertainment. But now we have this twist that goes along with it that is, this is why it's rugby, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I watched the women's Nero semifinals. I watched Harvard versus Army. And, oh, man, I mean, it was fantastic, right? I mean, those women, their uniforms, the athleticism, the tenacity, the skill that they played the game, and I'm watching it, and I got it on in my office, and, it just makes you sit back because it wasn't that long ago, right? I mean, I guess a lot of teams still, we're playing out on some back pitch, and it's just whoever you can grab, 15 players from each team. And, to see that type of preparation and to see the quality of the play. And it's something that, any sports fan can appreciate. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for, the average sports fan, and there's a lot of them. My father-in-law, he doesn't care what sport it is. He loves watching sports. And he loves watching young people get out there and get after it, and people who obviously take a lot of time and pride in their preparation. And that's what we're trying to produce here.
No, and I love it. That's the direction it needs to go, and I think that gives it the consistent jump start that makes people want to keep coming back more and more, as opposed to just one day being, oh man, that's cool, and then going on. I feel like that's where we want to always kill the, oh yeah, that sport's cool, and then just go. We want them to be like, oh, okay, all right, let me come back. I got to see what's happening next week, and develop these.
Yeah. And that's the typical response, though, right? I mean, you think about it. You take somebody to watch the Sevens, the World Series Sevens, right? And they can know nothing about rugby. They watch Sevens. They watch Kenya play Fiji, and they're losing their mind. They're like, athleticism, the speed, the ferocity. You can take two small nations, right, and see the way that they get after it, and people just they're losing their minds. And why can't we do that with college sports here, man? And there's a lot more buy-in for that, right? They already want to see Ohio State. They already want to see Notre Dame. So show them what Notre Dame rugby is all about. Let's show them what Ohio State rugby is all about. I know I'm partial. I know you're partial, but every person I know that's come from football and has tried rugby, it doesn't take long before it's all about rugby and they're less of a football fan. So let's help expedite that.
Get this process going. Let's go, Kevin. Let's go. Yeah. We use that battle last name for a reason. Oh, no, I love it. I absolutely love it. I agree fully. It is something like, again, it's something that I want to be able to see continue to develop, and not just develop, because I think we use that term very errantly in the sense of just get more people to play. But we really want to be able to develop the spectator, want to develop the fan that doesn't feel like they necessarily have to play to be able to appreciate. They can just come because they enjoy the environment, or they enjoy the spectacle, or they enjoy the event of the rugby. So I think what was trying to be done here, hopefully, is developing towards that arena, and allows more people to want to jump in to that.
Well, I got some stats for you. Think about this. There are 16 million baseball players in the U.S. 16 million. That's a big number, right? Mm-hmm. Major League Baseball will have 76 million people through the turnstiles. I mean, 4 times as many people go to a Major League Baseball game than who have ever played the game. If you think about football or basketball, take your pick. Well, we'll just start with football. They're not worried about the pathway to making it to the NFL team. What they're worried about is, how do we get 10 million kids playing football every year? Because the top 0.01% of them are actually going to make their way to the NFL. But what they're counting on is the other 99.9% of them are going to be fans, and they're going to buy a jersey, they're going to buy a hat, and they're going to be watching on Sunday afternoon, Monday night football. And I think we've been so focused on pathway and how do we get our athletes to the top of the game. And what I think is, how do we get more people participating in some form of the game, watching the game? Because it's those 10, 15, 20 million people who watch that are going to be the ones who drive the commercial in, so that we're able to pay for the buses and the uniforms and the broadcasts and the stadiums that our teams get to play in. So we want to turn it on its head, man. While we are interested in player development and coach development, we need to be interested in fan development. Right?
Agreed. Yeah, you are speaking to the choir, my friend.
All right, well, let's get this out, man. Let's get you out in front of the masses, and there's a few other guys out there. Matt McCarthy and Alex Goff, and I mean, you guys have been doing you guys have been beating this drum for a long time. So we're looking forward to getting you guys out in front of people and letting everybody see what the whole rugby community is about.
I'm about it. I appreciate it. Kevin, man, is there anything else that you feel like you want to be able to put out there that you think that is like, this is the glue that sends this over the top? All right, this interview's been great, but this last set of words will send it over the top.
Hey, well, I'll just put it to you this way. We're not stopping with D1A. Right. We know that we are in an opportunity, right, where we can leverage what we're doing to try and raise all boats, right? So we're working, we'll be releasing something here soon, but we'll be partnering with Women's D1 Elite. We're also trying to work out, we're pretty close to the finish line with trying to work something out with NSCRO as well. But, there's a lot of great opportunity to get college rugby on TV. There's a lot more of college rugby than just D1A. So, where we have that opportunity that we can leverage ourselves to bring other people up with us, we're going to do so.
I love it. Kevin, man, thank you so much.
Gift, it's my pleasure, man. Thank you.